The National Desk, America's News Now.
Donald Trump's latest indictment unsealed. We take a look inside the 37 criminal charges against the former president.
We have one set of laws in this country, and they apply to everyone. Applying those laws, collecting facts, that's what determines the outcome of an investigation. Nothing more and nothing less.
18 years later, the lead suspect in the disappearance of Natalie Holloway is finally arraigned in U.S. court.
We're just very happy to see you, Ron, on Alabama soil, and it just gives us a bit of closure, and we've been looking for this day for many years.
Then a Massachusetts restaurant facing social media backlash over a new menu item. Live from the nation's capital, this is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. We're glad you're with us on this Friday. The federal criminal indictment against former President Donald Trump has been unsealed. Donald Trump is facing 31 counts of willful retention of national defense information. On top of that, the former president and his personal aide, Walt Nauta, are jointly charged with further counts of conspiracy to obstruct justice, withholding information, concealing documents, as well as making false statements to the FBI. This afternoon, Special Counsel Jack Smith addressed the media to discuss how serious these charges are.
The men and women of the United States intelligence community and our armed forces dedicate their lives to protecting our nation and its people. Our laws that protect national defense information are critical for the safety and security of the United States, and they must be enforced. Violations of those laws put our country at risk.
Inside the indictment, Special Counsel Jack Smith alleges that the documents Trump took from the White House had information on defense and weapons capabilities of both the U.S. and foreign countries. They also detailed the United States nuclear programs, the military's potential vulnerabilities, and plans of how to respond to a foreign attack. Trump is also accused of showing other people these documents, including showing a copy of a plan of attack to a writer, publisher, and 2 members of his staff. Meantime, Republicans are calling into question the timing of this indictment and whether or not there is political motivation behind the charges.
The timing of it is just too eerie for me. Also, that this is a weaponization. This is a current president trying to take out his #1 opponent for the presidency next year. It's just not the timing is. Very suspicious to me.
Former prosecutor and current Democrat Congressman Dan Goldman, who was one of the litigators for Donald Trump's second impeachment, told CNN that being a candidate is not a defense.
We are a government of laws, not men, and that there is no one above the law. That's what the rule of law means. The rule of law does not mean we can't charge a former president and we can't charge a candidate for elected office. If that were the case, every member of Congress could never be charged.
President Biden was in North Carolina today, but gave no comment on the indictment. When asked if he has been in touch with Attorney General Merrick Garland, he said, "I have not spoken to him at all, and I'm not going to speak with him." We'll have more on the president's trip to North Carolina coming up in just a bit. The judge at the center of this case initially has been selected to be U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon, who was appointed by former President Donald Trump, adding another wrinkle here to this indictment. Not certain that Judge Cannon will be on the bench for the entirety of the trial. If Trump is ultimately convicted, it might be up to Judge Cannon to determine the sentence, potentially including prison time for the man who got her the job. Cannon has already been somewhat involved in this case, appointing a special master list last year, to review the material seized from Trump's estate. She's been criticized for handing Trump victories over the course of those proceedings. Before the indictment was released, Trump announced on his Truth Social today a change of his legal team. He wrote that he will be represented by Todd Blanche. He thanked Jim Trusty and John Rowley for their work, but said they were up against a very dishonest, corrupt, evil, and sick group of people. The smoke from Canadian wildfires is getting less intense for many parts of the U.S., but several cities are still under air quality alerts. The smoke continuing to drift south today, reaching as far as Florida. You can see on this map behind me the areas that are most affected, with yellow scattered all across the map here, indicating moderate air quality. Orange meaning unhealthy for sensitive groups. New York City's air quality is greatly improved after reaching the worst air quality in the world Wednesday. Look at these images. Meteorologists forecast the air in most cities will keep improving as we head into the weekend. Air quality will likely remain low tomorrow, but wind blowing north could bring more relief going into Sunday. A cold front in the eastern U.S. early next week could also help. The U.S. has sent over 600 firefighters to Canada, which is having the worst start to the wildfire season ever recorded. You can check the current air quality in your area at the website airnow.gov. We are also tracking some severe weather as we head into the weekend, impacting 21 million people. There is an enhanced risk of severe thunderstorms on Saturday across parts of north and central and northeastern Texas, as well as Oklahoma. You can see the areas there on your map. Southwestern Arkansas and most of Louisiana also impacted. This storm bringing with the possibility of gusts of wind from 50 to 70 miles per hour. The worst of it centered around Dallas, Texas, impacting as far north as Norman, Oklahoma, and as far east as Jackson. There is also a 30% chance of hail, 1 inch in diameter or larger, to hit Dallas and Waco. Hail of this size does have the potential to damage cars as well as houses. The prime suspect in the 2005 disappearance of American student Natalie Holloway pleaded not guilty today to extortion charges before a federal judge in Alabama. U.S. prosecutors say in 2010, Joran Vandersloot contacted Beth Holloway asking for $250,000 to reveal the location of Natalie's body. He was then indicted. Natalie's mother said, quote, "Today I am hopeful that some small semblance of justice may finally be realized." Vandersloot will remain in U.S. custody until the Alabama case is over. Then he'll return to Peru, where he had been serving time for a murder. We are learning that Nate Paul, the Texas businessman tied to the impeachment of Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, has been charged with 8 counts of making false statements to mortgage lenders. He was able to get $172 million in loans. 36-year-old Nate Paul taken into custody yesterday by the FBI and arraigned today after a year-long investigation. Paul's real estate empire is the focal point of Paxton's impeachment. Paxton is accused of using his office to help Paul's business interests investigate his adversaries and help settle a lawsuit. The Attorney General denies wrongdoing but is currently suspended from his duties, awaiting an impeachment trial in the Senate. A new poll shows the number of Americans considering themselves socially conservative is growing. Our Jeanette Bowens explaining what is behind this shift.
Pop culture and what you see on social media might have you believe most Americans would consider themselves socially liberal. This is what democracy looks like. But new data from Gallup shows that's not the case.
Social conservatism on the whole is at its highest point since 2012 when Obama was president.
38% of Americans say they are conservative on social issues. That's up 5 points since last year and 8 points since 2021, when a series of progressive social justice movements during Donald Trump's presidency were at their peak. Now, 29% say they are socially liberal. Gallup tells us there could be a few reasons for the shift, including dissatisfaction with Biden, more people identifying as Republican, and more Republicans considering themselves socially conservative at a time when controversial topics like transgender rights and abortion are big on the national stage.
Sort of a response to a pendulum swinging so far left.
Now, the poll says one thing, but Sarah Parshall-Perry with the Heritage Foundation suggests some people might be embarrassed to admit their views.
It is you believe it and will adhere to it, or you are painted as some kind of a transphobe and someone who's discriminatory in nature.
Woke is a desire to bully you into thinking elsewise.
Now, Tevi Troy with the Bipartisan Policy Center says another reason for this shift to social conservatism is what it means. He says 30 years ago, it meant you were pro-life. Now it could mean you're against youth transgender surgeries.
Janae, something that seems to be uniting a lot of people is their concern about the economy. Where do Americans stand on economic issues?
Well, economic conservatism is also up at 44%. That's the highest percentage since 2012. Meanwhile, 21% of Americans consider themselves liberal when it comes to the economy. Dee Dee.
All right, Janae Bowens in Washington, D.C. Thank you. Coming up next, the surprising outcome after a restaurant found itself in the middle of controversy over a menu item. Then, what many Americans are doing differently in response to financial fears. And an unexpected visitor had the nation's capital closing roads and sending for police. We're back in 90 seconds. President Joe Biden signed an executive order aimed at increasing job opportunities for military and veteran spouses at the newly renamed Fort Liberty this afternoon. The executive order is made up of nearly 20 actions. It directs agencies to develop a government-wide plan on hiring and job retention for military spouses and bolsters child care options for military families. President Biden emphasizes the U.S. is the finest fighting force in the history of the world. He says military spouses, caregivers, and survivors play a major role in that. Just before that ceremony, President Biden also visited Nash Community College in Rocky Mount, North Carolina today, highlighting his Investing in America agenda. The college was among those that received funding to train students for clean energy jobs under Biden's $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief package. The president and first lady toured the college's Advanced Manufacturing Institute. The 96-hour course is designed to prepare students for careers in the manufacturing sector without a four-year degree.
You can't have advanced manufacturing without a highly trained workforce. They don't go together. That's where you all come in. Here at this college, you're learning every aspect of advanced manufacturing.
Biden calls community colleges one of the best-kept secrets in America. The president and first lady will next go to Fort Liberty, North Carolina. They're expected to discuss boosting job opportunities for military and veteran spouses. A Massachusetts restaurant in the middle of a social media storm over a new menu item.
They're not forcing it on anybody. If you like the cake, you eat it, and if you don't like it, you don't eat it. It's that simple.
The Old Grist Mill Tavern announced on Facebook they would be serving a rainbow slice of cake for Pride Month. Shortly afterwards, the post had hundreds of comments, many negative, but others decided to go to the restaurant to show support. One couple hadn't eaten there in 30 years, but felt inspired after seeing the comments. The cake ended up selling out. According to an analysis from the Consumer Financial Bureau, Protection Bureau, 1 in 5 student loan borrowers has risk factors that suggest they could struggle when their payments resume. Now, 1 in 13 holders of federal student loans is currently behind on their other payment obligations, reportedly. Federal student loan repayments were paused for more than 3 years during the pandemic. But under the terms of the new debt ceiling deal, more than 40 million Americans with federal student loans will likely need to begin payments again this fall. Meantime, many Americans are shifting their spending habits in response to economic woes. Cassie Arsenault in Cincinnati, Ohio, reports.
Apples, bananas, broccoli.
Steaks, fruit, grapes, one of my favorites. Then I like those Gold Star chili. You microwave them.
I will go for the Kroger brands that are cheaper.
I go with the lowest price. Okay. Like say a can of green beans. Green beans to me is green beans.
Harold Alexander and Jacob Zimmerman aren't changing the foods they enjoy at the grocery store.
They haven't changed. They should change.
But the brands they grab are different. Both men are looking for store brands that are generally cheaper. Harold and Jacob both say they cut back on discretionary items like clothes or electronics.
Inflation hasn't hit all consumers equally.
But Jacob is doing what a lot of Americans are with their hard-earned money, and that's getting out of town.
Well, I just went on a 10-day trip to New York. Did I break the bank? Sure. But sometimes you have to enjoy life. So I'm so glad I did it, although I am still paying off that credit card bill. And it was like 2 months ago.
The latest figures we have is that global travel up in March of this year is up 31% compared to March of 22.
Most popular travel trends right now are cruises or flights to places like Italy, the UK, and France. And while we hear about layoffs and a looming recession, there's good news too.
Well, I think you have to start with the labor market. So on the one hand, the labor market's doing really well. We're adding jobs. The unemployment rate is very low.
But wages aren't necessarily keeping up with the rate of rising costs. So for consumers like Jacob and Harold, it's all about priorities and where they choose to put their cash.
Now, if I can afford it, I ain't gonna lie, I'm gonna buy it.
I do think something has to give, right?
I'm Cassie Arsenault reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Today, the Pentagon announced the U.S. will provide another $2.1 billion in long-term weapons aid for Ukraine. It's one of the larger packages the U.S. has provided. It'll help fund more Patriot missile battery munitions, air defense systems and missiles, and handheld drones. The package is meant to be spent over the coming months or years to help ensure Ukraine's needs are met in the future. It comes as Ukraine is beginning or about to begin a much-anticipated counteroffensive to take back territory. Netflix subscriptions are booming after the streaming platform started cracking down on password sharing earlier this year. Saw lots of people posting about this. According to data from analytics company Antenna, Netflix amassed more subscriptions in the U.S. between May 25th and May 28th than in any 4-day period since Antenna began compiling data. Before the crackdown, the company said more than 100 million people around the world used the platform on borrowed passwords. Netflix shares rose about 13% after the crackdown went into effect on May 23rd. We're taking the pulse of America, starting with new legislation for border security in Texas.
A surprise announcement on Thursday as Governor Greg Abbott unveiled a new initiative through the Texas Department of Public Safety designed to mitigate border entries. A wall of buoys.
We're securing the border at the border. What these buoys will allow us to do is to prevent people from even getting to the border.
Like, can you swim under those?
Yes, you can or you can't. There's also webbing that'll go down and anchor us to the bottom.
But constitutionally, the state is limited in what it can do. Supreme Court precedent puts border security in the hands of the federal, not the state government. But citing as what it sees as errors of the Biden administration, the Texas legislature is walking the line to enact what it can. That includes several border measures signed into law on Thursday, including one that codifies Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, and another that gives Border Patrol authority to arrest people crossing the border.
If mosquitoes make you squeamish, well, you may not want to be looking at this picture. There's about 10,000 of the insects on this plate, trapped by Multnomah County Vector Control, trapping more this year than in years past.
Because of the warm weather, the mosquito development can be really accelerated. And so what we're seeing is to this date, if you compare the 5 years past, we have collected more mosquitoes than we have within that 5-year span.
Well, right now we're seeing what's called floodwater mosquitoes, more likely to run into them along a riverbank or the wetlands, but they can breed anywhere there's water and people to bite. But infestation may not be around all that long.
However, it is very weather and temperature dependent, and that can actually change. So if we continue having a very dry, kind of rainless summer, we could actually see mosquito numbers drop going into July and into the end of the year.
What we know is that when we make it easier for a young person to gain access to a substance, they are more likely to use that substance.
Nicole Holt is the CEO of Texans for Safe and Drug-Free Youth. She understands why alcohol to go was made law in 2021 during the pandemic, but is concerned about its lack of compliance by some businesses. She says a recent study they did found 30% of San Antonio businesses weren't checking IDs.
When drinks were delivered to a home, that no ID was checked.
The Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission says training is required for alcohol delivery drivers.
TABC says they are in charge in enforcing state regulations involving alcohol to go in the state. They say they work hand in hand with local law enforcement to crack down on violators.
Coming up next, clean energy plans taking an unexpected turn as experts from the UK issue a warning to the U.S. Stay with us. Some of the world's leaders in green energy are reluctantly returning to fossil fuel in a big way. Full Measure Cheryl Atkinson reports from the United Kingdom, where experts say their experience is a warning of what may come here as the U.S. follows in their green energy footsteps.
You're looking at an artist's animation of a modern marvel, a massive project now under construction in the North Sea off the northeast coast of England. Alexandra Malone is with SSE Renewables, the company leading construction of the $10 billion project.
What role will the Dogger Bank wind farm play?
So Dogger Bank Wind Farm is going to be, when it's complete in 2025, the world's largest offshore wind farm. It's going to be able to provide over 5% of the UK's electricity demand.
It's all part of a master plan to hasten the death of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas. But on our recent visit to Great Britain, we found clean energy optimism dissolving into doubt. The fact is, there's been a fast and remarkable turnaround in Europe's green agenda. They're ramping back up on fossil fuel. Greece, the Netherlands, and the Czech Republic have already reopened shuttered coal plants and resumed coal mining where it had been halted. Germany has authorized restarting 27 coal plants.
We've been slaughtering each other.
David Cowling of King's College University in London.
You know, the coal is regarded as one of the worst polluters. And for a country that has been at the forefront of wanting to advance the cause of green energy, to have to reopen those coal mines is an admission of defeat.
It was a singular event that exposed serious fault lines in Europe's ambitious climate change plans. The war in Ukraine has laid bare poor planning, unrealistic goals, and reliance on an unreliable partner, Russia. Russia was providing half of the European Union's coal and 40% of its gas. The disaster unfolding in Europe may foreshadow what's to come in the U.S., which is following in Europe's footsteps. John Constable is author of Europe's Green Experiment. We caught up with him in London.
Do you really want to see falling energy consumption, deindustrialization, extremely high consumer prices across the board from industry right the way through to households? If that's what you want, well, by all means, go ahead, copy Europe and its experiment. If, on the other hand, you want to prosper and be a defensible and independent country still, well, think again.
How bad is it? Slovakia's prime minister recently declared that skyrocketing electricity costs have put the country's economy at risk of collapse. For Full Measure, I'm Cheryl Atkinson.
And check out this week's Full Measure on Sunday and look for Full Measure After Hours wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up right after this, what had officials closing roads and police rushing to the scene today in Washington, D.C. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We want to show you something you don't see every day in a big city. A large black bear in Washington, D.C., in a residential area in the northwest area of D.C., pranced around through people's yards, clearly climbed trees. So cute from far away. This guy hung out in the area for about 3 hours before being tranquilized. Officials say he was likely looking for food or his mom, and they say they're releasing him in rural Maryland to a better habitat. That's going to do it for us. Join us again tonight at 10 Eastern for more on the National Desk.